Okay. I'm Betty Procyse. I was born and raised in Berwyn Heights. I was born in a house on Roatan Street in April of 1931. I have grown up my entire life in Berwyn Heights except when I lived in Hyattsville in my first few years of marriage. I've seen a lot of changes around here.
I'm Mary Lou Milstead. My maiden name was Frost. I was born and raised in a Victorian house on Berwyn Road and 58th Avenue, the youngest of 6 that were born in that house. I've lived in Berwyn Heights all but 5 years of my life, my first 5 years of my married life. I was born in July of 1928, so I've been here for a long, long time. My father was very active in this town and really helped with the government and anything that needed to be done, school, anything. So I love this town. I don't want to ever leave.
I agree with that. I love Berwyn Heights too. It's one of the neatest towns there is. But we grew up all knowing each other.
Yeah.
And the spirit of being neighbors was true back then. It was the homemade custards for the tonsillitis and soups being brought over back and forth and a lot of things that I just cherish the memories.
We were everywhere. And
it was
the house
safe.
I lived in, we had open lots beside us, and that was our ball field, badminton court, horseshoe court. We ran, played in the creek down Indian Creek.
Yes,
It was the freedom.
Indian Creek was beautiful because I remember they used to go down there and catch huge catfish.
Yes.
Oh my God, they were ugly. I never liked catfish because they were so ugly and they scared me when I was little. And they also caught huge turtles. It was fun to go down there. And at the top where the Berwyn Heights School was the St. Anne's Orphanage. And in the wintertime when it snowed, that was our sleigh riding hill. We could start all the way up at the top of that hill, come all the way down, go past the firehouse here,
down to here,
around the corner, and a lot of times our goal was to try to make it to the bridge. Sometimes it was accomplished, but that sleigh ride with the long walk back, oh my God.
And how about roller skating on Pontiac Street and down at the bridge?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they always had the bonfires going at sleigh riding parties. There was always fire that you could stand by and get all the big clunks of snow torn off your mittens because you were bundled up so much you were a roly-poly. But that sleigh riding was one of the greatest things, and I wish the kids today could experience that. The old school that was up there, the Berwyn Heights little 2-room school. Now, I graduated from there in 4 in my class. We were a big class. But that was also a wonderful sleigh riding hill.
Years here in town, we lived on Pontiac Street and the corner of Pontiac and Cunningham. And I remember a big day of sitting out on our steps waiting. Eleanor Roosevelt was going to Greenbelt to see how Mr. Tugwell was progressing with the building of Greenbelt. So we sat on those steps all morning long waiting to see Eleanor Roosevelt go by, and she did wave to us, all of us that were sitting there. McDonald's was another big deal in Berwyn Heights. When they built the McDonald's, oh my.
Yeah.
One of my sons worked there. That was great.
Yes, I was totally unfamiliar with McDonald's and who they were. So when they were coming and opened up, I wasn't even used to the name of what they were. And my husband told me, he said, tomorrow night I'm going to take you to the Golden Arches restaurant. And I thought, man, that sounds cool. And I got all dressed and everything. And we went to McDonald's. And he never lived that down because I never let him forget it. I remember when I was in 5th grade, I think. And they were 4th grade, and they were going to close Berwyn Heights School. And oh my God, everything broke loose then. People were so upset. And I don't know I know I have it, but there's a picture, it was either the Washington Post or Times Herald then, of myself and 3 other students, that my graduating class actually, sitting on the front steps saying, we're on strike. I can't believe
really?
that we went on strike that long ago, but I do have that picture. I mean, they really fought it. And the one year I had to go to Berwyn Elementary School, and I think it was fifth or sixth grade, I can't be sure. And then they did leave the school open, and we were all so happy because we got to go back to Berwyn Heights School. But I was very lucky because they had put indoor bathrooms in. Because they used to have the old outhouses, and they had 2 of them. My sisters would tell me about that.
So what year are we talking about again? Do you have any?
That was in the very late 30s. Very late 30s. I remember so well Pop Hudgens. He was always known as Pop Hudgens. Being up at that school all the time. He was always fixing something, always working something. They had the old-fashioned furnace that had the steam would go off, and you'd hear this loud hissing, and we'd all have to get out of the school until Pop Hudgens got his tools out and got it all calmed down. Then we could go back into school. But it was just something, and Pop Hudgens was one of the most well-known
He was
people
probably
in Berwyn
the
Heights.
most well-known, yes.
Everybody knew Pop Hudgens.
And he lived in Berwyn Heights?
Uh-huh.
Oh, absolutely. That the Pop Hudgens Park.
Oh, yes, yes.
That was named in honor of him.
Hi, I'm William T. Armistead. I was mayor in town of Berwyn Heights from 1974 till May of 2000. Mayor and councilman, rather. 13 years as mayor and 13 years as councilman. My family, which includes my wife Frances and 4 children, grew up in the town of Berwyn Heights. We moved in July 1962, where we enjoyed life and participated in the Cub Scouts, the Boys Club, and PTA, and the Girl Scouts. So we had quite a. I was a rec council on that for in the late '60s and early '70s. Put on the Saturday afternoon movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't originate it. Jim Anderson, who was president of the rec council, started it. And when I replaced him on the rec council, I just perpetuated it for quite a few years. And then Darrell Lofgren took it over.
No kidding.
Again for quite a few years. And we would, I think, charge a quarter for movies, sell candy.
Where would you get the movies from?
We got the movies from the Film Center downtown. We would intersperse them with movies from the Prince George's County Library. Those were free, and the ones downtown cost us. The proceeds from selling the candy help also defray the cost of that. We also, when we start depending heavily on the Film Center movies, we charge a quarter. And we would call the mothers around town, and we would have one mother there every weekend to kind of supervise. And we'd have 2 people to run the projector and one to sell candy. And it worked excellent from like October through April or May, something like that.
That's wonderful. Did you do it at the school?
No, right upstairs in the community center.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah, we had, I don't know if John Green's come up in the past history or not, but John was on the rec council for a couple decades, maybe 3. He cut a hole out of the kitchen. We built a platform, cut a hole, we could put the projector up there. And you could stand on the counter and run the movies through the projector, and there was a screen. I believe that screen might still be there
No
upstairs.
kidding. Wow.
But anyway, we would just pull the screen down.
Huh.
And it worked very well. We had an amplifier outside
So,
where you could hear the movies.
what kind of crowds would you get?
We would get 20 or 30 kids in there.
Incredible.
We had a lot of kids in town. That's one of the things that happened to the town is, if you go back and look at the 1970 census, we had like 3,900 people. When you got to the 1980 census, we were about 3,100. 1990, about 3,000. I'm not sure what 2000 was.
Wow, that's incredible.
But that's your town grew up in the 50s and 60s. The children that these young families brought into this town, including my family, with 4 of us, they grew up and they left town, and parents stayed.
And what are some of your memories of growing up in Berwyn Heights? Things that you did, what you enjoyed doing?
Well, probably the most significant thing was probably joining the fire department at 16.
Okay.
It was during the war years, World War II.
Was the fire department in the same location it is today?
No, it was on Pontiac Street, a small building down there, close to where in the vicinity there where the town offices are.
Okay, it's a 2-story building.
No, it was just a single-story building. But later on, the 2-story building was built
Okay.
next to it.
Okay.
But the present location, I don't remember the street name, is out closer to Greenbelt Road.
What was it like being part of the Berwyn Heights Volunteer Fire Department? Was it busy?
Oh, we had our times. I remember, like, of course, during the war years, there weren't many men around, so they had us junior firemen there at 16. And what annoyed the principal of Greenbelt High School is when the chief from the fire department would come up there with the truck and blow the siren, and we'd race out to go on the fires.
So he'd pick you right up from the school?
Yeah,
Oh, no matter what you were doing?
yeah, and as I say, the principal didn't like that, but we mentioned it to our fire chief. He wrote a letter to the principal and said that he could subpoena him to fight a forest fire if he wanted. So we didn't hear any more
More about it.
from him.
Do you think
I was born in 1953 in the hospital and was brought home to 5616 Ruatan Street at the time. Lived there until after I graduated in 1971, and then I moved to Greenbelt for a short period of time and had a home, but still came back here daily, washed my clothes and all that kind of stuff. And then my father moved to Florida in 1984, and I moved back into the house with my husband, and we have been there ever since. Just a lot of in the town, like going out and hanging around down at in the parks and the playing softball at the ball field, and then we would do a lot of sleigh riding back when there weren't too many houses there, and we could go up behind the elementary school and go down the hill and down the end of our street. And I know that we raised chickens and we raised rabbits, and I know I was too young at one point to have a rabbit, so I kind of cried because the other 3 got one and I didn't. And also remember Mr. Snyderman riding his horse around a lot, and we used to sit up on the horse, which had scared me to death. We used to go fishing a lot down Indian Creek, and my first fish I caught was a catfish. And I remember my father nailing it to the tree and skinning it, and I would never eat a catfish. And it was just kind of like made me sick. But we used to go down there and play down there all the time and play on the train tracks and go down to the old building down there where the conductor would sit in there and the trains would come up and let people off work and stuff like that. And so if they wanted me, I hung out there a lot. I was more of a tomboy. Used to come down here to the center when the firehouse was the original firehouse, and Pop Hudgens used to sit out in his chair on the front all the time, and we would walk around here and get our little crass sodas out of the soda machine for a nickel and sit on his lap and talk with him for a while, watch some of the trucks go out, and then walk back home since we were so close. So we hung around a lot on Berwyn Road, the bridge, the back where the ball fields were and things like that, because we had a lot of activities down behind our house with all the Boys and Girls Clubs. Very large 3-story house across the street from us that we knew Professor Stewart had at the time, not knowing if he owned it or not. But we used to spend a lot of time in that house getting lost when we were little. And he had it decorated very nicely and had some nice statues and things like that. And I do know at one point I found that my mother had a burning cigarette on an overstuffed chair, which cracked and it burnt the living room down. And so we had to go across, and we lived in this big house while we were getting the house repaired. And we always were over there. And I used to get up early in the morning, open the front door, go over there in his garage, open the door, sit in his car, and blow the horn until somebody came out to get me. And I did this quite often, so they had to keep putting locks on the house so I wouldn't get out of the house. And
And how
finally,
were you?
I was probably about 3 when I started doing this. And as soon as I could get out the house, I would go out the house. So I was a little difficult to take care of because I was always into everything.
Wally Rossmiller. For 22 years, I was the treasurer of the Rec Council, along with John Breen and Pat Bryan as the other officers involved in many a Berwyn Heights Day in the 70s and the 80s, possibly into the early 90s.
My name's David McCaffrey, and I've been involved. I've been in Berwyn Heights for 48 years. I've been in the Boys Club, PTA, and the Fathers Show. I've been in we had our first civic association. I was in that. That's when we were fighting with the council when I first moved here. The town had dirt roads when I moved here, and I've seen roads paved and streets paved, and it's been quite a ride, believe me. Great place.
I moved here in January of 1961, and I live on Charlton Avenue, and the only way to get to this part of town was to go back out to Edmonston, come around, because Charlton did not go up to Berwyn Road. And then when it did, then I drove down Berwyn Road, and it was dirt. I couldn't believe it. This was back in 1961. Quite a few have moved out.
Yeah, well, I moved in Berwyn Heights in 1957. My daughter was 2 months old, and when I moved here, I moved on Paxton Court, and that was the only paved street outside of Cunningham, and I was the only street in town that had sidewalks because it was GI loan, and that was a criteria. You had to have paved streets and gutters and sidewalks, and you had to have gutters on your house, and we had both. But when I got down to the end of the street, it was a mud hole. That was called Osage Street. And then if you made a right there and you got the 60th there, that was another mud hole. That was also wasn't paved. The only street that was really paved, which went north and south, was Cunningham Drive. And that was only paved down to Berwyn Road.
Other show that was prevalent at the PTA went down the tubes.
That's it.
Both of us were in the show.
I was in it for 7 years. And then
You were a diva. You were a star.
oh yeah,
He played my father in one, and he was there to see the woman in the flying trapeze.
yeah, we did a lot of things. But I mean, it was good. It was great. It was a fundraiser, and I'll tell you, on the Father's Night on the shows, that school was packed.
Yeah.
Packed. I made barbecue up there for years.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And good taste in barbecue.
Yeah, I made the barbecue up there for years.
But
Sure did.
They sold during the show.
Huh?
They sold this during the show.
Yeah, no, that they sold it, but not during the show.
no, they had food and they had games.
Well, yeah, they had like what they called, I think, a spring fair.
Yeah,
Spring fair, and it was a fundraiser.
yeah,
They charged all of
That's
it.
usually where I was. I didn't get to see you guys that much.
yeah.
We used to do 5 or 6 shows an evening.
You
We made $10,000 in air-conditioned multi-purpose room.
Yeah,
I have a lot of fond memories. This town's been very, very good for me. I raised 4 children here. They both got excellent educations from the elementary school, which Miss Farwell was the principal. In fact, my daughter went to the little school over on Ruatan Street when we first moved here, because that was she went to kindergarten there.
Yeah, I was just talking about that. That was a cooperative thing, right?
It was a cooperative thing, right? And then she went to the first grade at Berwyn Heights Elementary when it opened. But it's been very good for me. All my children, like I said, was educated here. It's been a good town. I met a lot. I'll put it to you this way: if I'd have had 10 places to choose from, to pick a place to live and raise my family, I couldn't pick a better one than the one I stumbled on. It's been very good for me. Very good.
I call it the best